where Celtic is now, and unless they somehow get into another league, or the Scottish league somehow become very, very competitive and high quality, which probably is not going to happen over the next 5-10 years. Maybe that's just the status quo now.
But just to touch on your end point there, Christian, as you said, maybe not high quality, but it's becoming more competitive, given the fact that Aberdeen are where they are. Dundee United and Inverness, Hamilton are all not too far back. But instead of that being lauded and praised as something good for the Scottish game, it's another stick to beat Dyla with,
It's a funny thing, that, because if you look at the 3-4 teams around Celtic, you basically first to fifth, and the amount of points they're going to have, the top 5 teams have the same amount of points, or at least the teams from, say, 3rd, 4th and 5th have more points than the same teams in the English Premier League based on after 21 games. And also, in terms of what I touched upon earlier as well, Celtic is second place because Aberdeen is having a fantastic year, because Dundee United is having a great year as well. So it's a bit of an abnormality. There's a bit unusual circumstances there. But yeah, it's funny to say that because all these teams are taking more and more points, that's not to say that the quality has gone down. Because Celtic's point total now, compared to all of London's season except last year, it's pretty much just the same. There's a couple, 2-3 points below some of the 2 other seasons, but after 16 games, Dyla had more points than Lennon had in his first 3 seasons. So it's not like Celtic is doing particularly bad when it comes to actual points. I think it's more the other teams doing better. And I'm saying with you, Chris, I can't really equate that to saying, the quality has dropped. I just don't see how you make that leap. I think I don't know where that comes from in certain commentators.
It's laziness, and I would say so, and I reckon it's, even as Celtic fans, we would probably admit that it's obvious that in this country that there's a almost complete focus on us and Rangers. And in terms of analysis, it's easy to say that if teams are nearer than us, that it's because we're rubbish, as opposed to an overall increase in their quality. It is absolute laziness.
It's funny to say, the same thing happened in Norway as well when Rosenborg fell down, and the argument was that because you don't have that one really good team that does well in Europe, apparently that team somehow dragged the quality of the league upwards as well, which I think is just a fake analysis. Yeah. I don't think that happens. I think a league gets better with more competitive teams just because it's a different mental frame of mind when you play as well.
And I mean, this is ultimately when Rangers died, this is what we talked about. There's a chance that the Aberdeens and Dundee Uniteds could take this opportunity and start to grow and start to become part of a dominant force. Obviously Celtic are there, but they could start to get to the point where they may be able to compete with us, and it looks like maybe we're starting to get there. Obviously we're still a bigger team with more money.
They probably would have been even more competitive if there was any sort of competence in Scottish football as well to actually get a good TV deal, because the way the league is commercialised and the TV rights are so poor. I mean, I've written about this before, but the Norwegian TV deal is worth almost 3 times the Scottish ones. And it is a completely comparable product. And then you probably say the Scottish product is better because you got Celtic and Rangers, and you got big teams in the big towns as well. So, and had they had that when Rangers fell out, teams like Aberdeen and Dundee and Inverness would get a lot more money, especially for them comparably. So that those teams have dragged themselves up by the bootstraps, it's credit to them, but not to Scottish football authorities.
Lions led by donkeys.
Took the words right out of my mouth there, Chris.
That's what I thought.
I would say as well with the media, why they've not picked up on. Well, obviously when Rangers died, there was a whole there's going to be Armageddon in the league and teams are going to go out of business and all that. But yet we look at it now, and there must be 3 or 4 teams now who have actually come out of debt, like Aberdeen, Dundee United, I think Kilmarnock as well, have managed to renegotiate their funds so that they actually aren't in debt anymore. and put that together with how they're performing on the pitch, you can't see why the media keep slamming the league and keep slamming Celtic when it is proven that the rest of the teams have improved a lot over the last year or two without the Rangers.
Can I just say to Seth, if you're watching our games illegally, could you please take out a legitimate subscription and tell all of the fellow American Celtic fans to do the same, because we need every penny we can get.
Is there a legal stream?
I'll tell everybody.
Thanks very much. I'll give you a couple of days to get through them.
All 5 of them.
Christian made an interesting point there just about until Celtic maybe go to a different league. Now, I've talked about Louis, Chris, Ciaran about the possibility of the English Premiership and Celtic going there. It's something that's came up year after year. But just with Christian and Seth on the line now, I'm just wondering what your perspective of that would be. Do you think there would be a good thing for Celtic to try to get into the English Premiership? And if they did, do you think that they could be competitive? I'll ask Christian first.
I can't really see in the near to medium future, if Celtic stays in the same league, I don't see. We talked about that the Scottish League might be more competitive, it might get a little bit more quality. I can't see it being a big boost in revenues. I can't see Celtic, being a steady Champions League club, although they might get in. Though I think if you want to change Celtic's future as a club, from what I can see now, you'd have to get in there. And I'm not even talking about going into the Premier League. I think if Celtic was offered a chance to go into the English Conference next season, they should take it, because you'd have to build up slowly, but the potential they could have is enormous. I mean, absolutely enormous when you think about, the Celtic, I'm going to say the word brand, but the tradition and the history and the amount of people around the world that has a connection to Celtic and, almost per definition Ireland. The commercial potentials are enormous if they came into the Premier League. You wouldn't get, over a period of 5-10 years, Celtic should be one of the top 10 clubs in the world if they had that. And it's, I just don't know how much, is that ever going to happen? You don't know. Would you want it to happen would you want to move out of the Scottish League? It's another question as well, but in the way European football is going, I think you might start seeing clubs from countries like, say, the second tier, like Belgium, like maybe even Portugal, but Croatia, like Poland, maybe a few of those clubs starts to go into the major league. So you don't have a big European league, but you have basically an open championship. You have a Premier League with 2, 3 foreign teams. You have a Bundesliga with 2, 3 foreign teams, and that kind of things. But unless that happens, I think Celtic's future is, bar something quite radical with changing Scottish football, is going to be about on the same level now, where you're happy if you get into Champions League, good run in your Europa League, and that's and the type of players you can attract is probably where you are at the moment.
I was just going to say quickly, the kind of thought of going to England for me is positive and negative. Yes, it would be fantastic commercially, and we could build the club up to what our kind of ambitions and expectations are, but to not be playing in Scotland against Scottish teams would be a shame. But I wonder if, and I'm just thinking out loud, but if you could possibly have a way where maybe Celtic could still be in the Scottish Cup or a kind of Scottish cup competition, if we were playing our league football down south, but you could still play against the Scottish clubs in a kind of Scottish Cup scenario, I think that might be a way of possibly balancing it out.
Just to put in with my tuppence worth, I mean, I don't particularly have any desire to leave Scotland in terms of to play football. I just would prefer if there was more financial parity across Europe, because I don't particularly like the whole let's move out of this league and into that league. I mean, there was a once upon a time Scotland thrived in Europe. Now that's very unlikely to happen again, but not even just for Scotland. I'd like it whereby like a team from you'd Steaua Bucharest from Romania or something like that, or Red Star that came from the old Yugoslavia, where a team like this, it's feasible that they could rise and go to the top of a European game even just for one season. Porto's probably the last team that you could say that weren't like one of the major leagues that won the European Cup, and I think I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'd like it to be whereby teams could appear and do that. But when it comes to the finances just now, it's just not feasible. Basically,
what you're saying there is that international football needs to become more socialist, in terms of more socialism, in terms of if you want to compare it that way, you need to, football as it is now is very, if you want to use the word capitalistic, unless you're in the big leagues, that's where all the money goes as well. You basically want to redistribute the wealth.
You called that right, comrade?
Yes, exactly. So which is interesting, but so basically, and in a way, that model is between the top leagues. They basically do redistribute it between themselves as well, and the biggest clubs. So I think that's, if you could somehow change the system, I totally agree with you. I think it would be a shame if Celtic left Scotland, because they're a Scottish club, and ultimately I would like teams to play in their national league as well. I wouldn't really want to see a combined Scandinavian league, but I wonder if you do have the American model here. Maybe Seth can come in on this as well, where the way American sports are organized is probably quite ironically, since it's American, is very socialist in terms of all the TV money and all the the merchandise revenue is put into one pot and it's redistributed. And the same, obviously, the players' draft and everything like that. Now, you can't do all of that in Europe just because of employment laws and things like that. But we get that big influence of especially American owners who basically are in this to make money and not too worried about actually trophy success. You could see somehow, ironically, that all these big owners might end up saying, look, we should just model it on the American model. And if you can, redistribute this wealth, because it saves us, because we don't have to pay massive wages, but we can still get the TV rights in as well. So maybe we'll end up somehow in that model, which would be good. But I think, realistically, if you look at the system as it is now, Celtic would have to get out of the league to get close to their potential.
Seth, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the potential for an American model is interesting, because when you have that kind of profit sharing and like salary caps and that sort of things, it really levels the playing field. So American sports fans, I'm thinking mainly of NFL, they feel like their team has a chance when the season starts. I don't think you can say the same for fans of Kilmarnock and St. Mirren and that sort of thing, and I mean a chance to win the league, right? So they, in the case of the NFL, they do have a real chance. I mean, of course, there are teams that are perennially good, but it's not because they have better resources. It's the system, it's the culture, it's other things. As far as resources go, it's more or less a level playing field, and so you get a greater diversity of champions. And so the risk for Celtic in that is that they may not win the league in some years. Maybe Aberdeen wins the league, in some years, but that's what we're talking about as being supposedly good, right? We're not saying, good for Scottish football. We're not saying, competition is good, except Celtic has to win every year.
Correct. That's absolutely
those
right.
two things don't go together, right? Not for me. So if you really want competition, then level the playing field in terms of resources. Make that also makes it more attractive for players, because they think, hey, I could go to Aberdeen and I could actually maybe play in the Champions League. And it also makes it more attractive for business people who want to put money into an endeavor that that is going to reap rewards in terms of European football. So if we're speaking like purely